Thank you, Laura. The first words of my sermon, literally before I knew she was going to play that song, were regrets. I've had a few. Those are the words from a famous song. And I can go along with I have regrets, or a few or more. And many of those regrets are due to things not of my own making. My biggest one is that I've not been able to enjoy the company of my son for the last 18 years. Those of us of a certain age can probably agree that my grandchildren are growing up entirely too quickly. We want them to stay little rocker babies for a while longer. And the biggest regret of ever, the Bengals haven't won a Super Bowl yet. But anyway, there's not much we can do about those regrets that come from the outside other than to accept them and to deal with them. But how about those regrets that come from things that are of our own making? We all have some. For example, many times in college, I regretted not studying hard enough for a test so that I didn't get the grade on it that I thought I should have gotten. Sometimes we're in a relationship and we break up with the person for a silly reason. Of course, when we did it, we didn't think it was silly, but once it was done, it was like, why in the heck did I do that? Sometimes we lose track of old friends. We don't take care of our health. I mean, I could go on, and I'm sure that if I opened it to the church and asked you guys to share your regrets, we would be here until forever. That's how many regrets there are in the world. But in Ecclesiastes, chapter 7, verses 13 and 14, it says, "Consider the work of God. Who can make straight what he has made crooked? In the day of prosperity, be joyful, and in the day of adversity, consider. God has made the one as well as the other, so that mortals may not find out anything that will come after them." In other words, if God gives us difficult times, there's a reason for it, just as there's a reason for it if our path is smooth at the particular time. But even knowing that there's a hand in things, call it the universe. If you don't think that God specifically, gives us regrets and all that, call it the universal energy. But wherever it comes from, we all have regrets. And if we sit and dwell on our regrets, we still have more regrets. Kind of like the gentleman in this particular story. I'd not really planned on taking a trip this time of year, and yet I found myself packing rather hurriedly. This trip was going to be unpleasant, and I knew in advance that no real good would come of it. I'm talking about my annual guilt trip. I got tickets to fly there on Wish I Had Airlines. It was an extremely short flight. I got my baggage, which I could not check. I chose to carry it myself all the way. It was weighted down with 1,000 memories of what might have been. No one greeted me as I entered the terminal to the Regret City International Airport. I say international because people from all over the world come to this dismal town. As I checked into the last resort hotel, I noticed that they would be hosting the year's most important event, the annual pity party. I wasn't going to miss that great occasion. Many of the town's leading citizens would be there. First, there would be the Dunn family. Should've, would've, and could've. Then came the I Had family. You probably know Old Wish and his clan. Of course, the opportunities would be present, missed, and lost. The biggest family would be the Yesterdays. There are far too many of them to count. Each one would have a very sad story to share. then shattered dreams would surely make an appearance. And it's their fault would regale us with stories or excuses about things that failed in his life. And each story would be equally loudly applauded by "Don't blame me," and "I couldn't help it." Well, to make a long story short, I went to this depressing party knowing that there would be no real benefit in doing so. And as usual, I became very depressed. But as I thought about all of the stories of failure brought back from the past, it occurred to me that all of this trip and subsequent pity party could be canceled by me. I started to truly realize that I did not have to be there. I didn't have to be depressed. One thing kept going through my mind. I can't change yesterday, but I do have the power to make today a wonderful day. I can be happy, joyous, fulfilled, encouraged, as well as encouraging. Knowing this, I left the city of regrets immediately and left no forwarding address. Am I sorry for the mistakes I've made in the past? Yes. There's no physical way to undo them. So, if you're planning a trip back to the city of regret, please cancel all your reservations now. Instead, take a trip to a place called Starting Again. I liked it so much that I may now have taken up permanent residence there. My neighbors, the Forgive Myself and the New Start, are so very helpful. By the way, you don't have to carry around heavy baggage because the load is lifted from your shoulders upon arrival. God bless you in finding this great town. If you can find it, and it's in your own heart, please look me up. I live on I Can Do It Street. So, how do we cancel our reservations to the city of regret? Are there some steps we can take that will help us stay in Starting Again and I won't go back there? So these ideas that I have here are based on those of Dr. Robert Leahy, and he is from the American Institute for Cognitive Therapy. And as a little side note here, if you've never looked up cognitive therapy or its offshoot dialectical behavioral therapy, I have found that that is absolutely, totally amazing and very helpful information, whether you think you need therapy or not. But anyway, so how do we get off of that, pity party that we put ourselves on? First, we can try to ask ourselves if there's any advantage to continuing our regret. Are we trying to teach ourselves a lesson or motivate ourselves to do better somehow? Or are our regrets keeping us from enjoying our lives and moving on to the next step? If we truly think our regrets will teach us something, then we can write down exactly what we would do differently in the future. For example, if we're impulse buyers, perhaps we can journal about how that affects our cash flow. By bringing it into our consciousness as a problem with a solution, it no longer serves a purpose as a regret. Along with this, we probably should remember that we're not perfect. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone needs practice at something before they're good at it or before they're absolutely wonderful at it. Remember the old story, Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team. Babe Ruth struck out as much as he hit. So let's look at mistakes as experiences that give us valuable information. It seems that many of us, and I might be able to say most of us, learn more from our mistakes than our successes. Another thing we should probably keep in mind is that, surprise, surprise, we don't know everything. Perhaps we regret a relationship because a significant other cheated on us. Unless we knew going in that that person had a history of cheating, how are we supposed to know that it would happen? As the saying goes, hindsight is 20/20. But if we try to judge our current actions or emotions based on knowledge gained through hindsight, we're causing more problems for ourselves. We only know what we know at the time. Accepting our limitations or our limited knowledge doesn't mean that we're not good at making decisions or that we're stupid or not good people. It simply means that we live in a world of uncertainty where we don't have total knowledge of everything and everybody. Sometimes we stay in bad situations because we're afraid of future regrets. If I leave this person, she'll change the behavior that's driving me nuts, but then I won't have the pleasure of her company anymore. Of course, while we're waiting for her to change, because if we sit there and wait for her to change, then we won't have the regrets about leaving her. But while we're waiting for that change, we're miserable. And how big are the chances of that change actually occurring? Probably very small. So worrying about future regrets will keep us stuck in a place of little or no growth, and possibly a way from which we see no way out. Now, what about the saying, if only I had done such and such? I remember someone saying to me that if only he had taken his significant other to more movies, he would have stayed with him. But believe me, there were more issues in that relationship than just the amount of movies they attended. I call this situation having imaginary regrets. I'm sure that the man really did regret not going to more movies, but concentrating on something like that keeps him from either leaving the regret behind or turning that regret into a learning experience. So, let's talk about something we can do to practice leaving our regrets behind. One thing is to set aside time to focus on our regrets. That sounds a little counterintuitive, but I'm not talking about doing it all day, every day, but 20 minutes here and there. Maybe even actually make an appointment to deal with our regrets. If some regrets pop up at other times, we can write them down and plan to deal with them at that appointed time. Now, there's a very good possibility that that appointed time will never arrive, because making an appointment means that we can also break an appointment. And it seems to me that an appointment with our regrets is not one we would want to keep. In a bit of convoluted logic, we are left our regrets behind by simply refusing to meet with them. By looking at the past and regretting what we did that was wrong, not well thought out, possibly illegal, or in most of the time, for me anyway, just plain stupid, we could leave ourselves in the position described in this poem by Paul Laurence Dunbar. This is the debt I pay just for one riotous day. Years of regret and grief, sorrow without relief. Pay it I will to the end, until the grave, my friend. Gives me a true release. Until the grave gives me a true release. Gives me the clasp of peace. Slight was the thing I bought. Small was the debt I thought. Poor was the loan at best. God but the interest. Regrets, kept with us tightly, can be so pervasive that we feel as though we're forever paying heavily for a few poor actions or decisions. So instead of looking at a past full of regrets, let's look at the future and the great possibilities that await us there. Without regretting what happened in the past, we can use the knowledge we gained to make well-informed decisions about our lives now. Will the decisions always be good ones? Of course not. We're all human, and therefore subject to all of those things that we go through our minds as we try to problem solve. You know, we make our shopping list when we go to the grocery store. I need to get milk, eggs, potato. Oh, a squirrel! I like peanuts. Did I feed the dog? Oh, something shiny. Oh yeah, potatoes and carrots. It's kind of the way it is when we try to sit down and think of something and really concentrate on it. However, even though we can't concentrate, we can try to ask if there's any advantage to our regrets. What can we see if we can figure out a different way to handle a similar situation in the future? We can determine if our regrets are future regrets or imaginary regrets. Make appointments to deal with regrets we haven't yet left behind. Then we cancel those appointments as they become necessary. And we can give ourselves credit for being imperfect or lacking knowledge. Remember, consider the work of God who can make straight what he has made crooked. In the day of prosperity, be joyful, and in the day of adversity, consider. God has made the one as well as the other, so that mortals may not find anything out that will come after them. Regrets are memories of situations that have been made crooked. When we have regrets, we can consider that God has given us those situations, not to cause us future pain, but to give us a measuring stick on which to base future actions and emotions. What we do with our regrets is up to us. We can wallow in our pain, or we can consciously work on understanding that pain and use it to make better choices in the future. We can expect to have a few twists and turns in our journey to leave regrets behind, but we can do it. We can choose to leave the city of regrets off of our vacation list and make our destination starting again with neighbors and thoughts that support us in that endeavor. By the end of it, if we choose, we can certainly state unequivocally, regrets, I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention. I did what I had to do. I saw it through without exemption. I planned each charted course, each careful step along the way, and more, much more than this, I did it my way. Thank y'all for listening.